The Murray State Racers have been one of the best mid-major college basketball teams over the last several decades. Just 4 seasons ago, they reached 20th in the AP poll, went back to the Big Dance as a 7th seed as a member of the Ohio Valley Conference. This is a conference that normally gets 14, 15 seeds. However, we then saw a 7 seed coming out of this thanks to Murray State. Now, 3 seasons into the Missouri Valley Conference after moving up from the OVC alongside their arch rivals Belmont, they have not quite found their footing yet in conference. They brought in former head coach Steven Prohm, but after 3 disappointing seasons, especially disappointing for Murray State Racer fans, they decided to move on, and they brought in a new face, Ryan Miller, who previously served as an assistant coach at Creighton. So now, underneath this, the Murray State Racers have an entirely new roster. I'm talking not a single returning player from Murray State last season is on this roster this year, and Ryan Miller has done a killer job. A lot of the metrics right now don't understand how to rate the Racers because, number one, when you have an entirely new team, you don't know how they're going to gel together. Many of these people have not played before. Many of these people are coming from all over the different ranks, JUCO, lower Division I, power conferences transferring down, you name it, they've gotten it. So the metrics are having a tough time understanding what can this team live up to. However, I'm here to tell you, and other people are here to tell you, the Racers could be fully back this season into the 2025-2026 season. I firmly believe that this roster is arguably maybe the most talented since Jaw was on the team. So anyway, let's get into the specifics here, and let's take a look at who Ryan Miller has brought in. Diving straight into the guards, we have Ben Shtolzberg, who's coming in from UC Santa Barbara. So he actually started his career at Creighton. Shocker. So kind of the connection there between Ryan Miller already. Started at Creighton there in the 2022-2023 season, but last year he shot 50% overall from the floor. He took 2.5 attempts per game. He shot just 20% from behind the arc, so not exactly a good three-point shooter. But, on his career, it's not much better. He's shooting 23.2%. Despite 35.6% of his shot attempts being from beyond the arc. So last season overall, he averaged 3.8 points, 1.8 rebounds, and 1.5 assists for the Gauchos. So, Ben Shtolzberg is probably going to be a backup guard for the Racers. We have a lot of players to cover here. However, what I do like about him is he handles the ball very well. So he featured a 1.5 to 0.6 assists to turnover ratio last year. So this is the type of guy that, yes, he's probably not going to score a ton for you. He's not going to be an 8 to 9 point a game guy. However, he can come in and give you minutes, and I think that's what's important on these roles. You don't have to come in and be the star, but you need somebody who can be able to handle the ball in the secondary, and I think that's going to be the guy for the Racers this season. I think 15 to 20 minutes a game is probably realistic for him in coming into the season, so keep an eye on him. I love a good inter-conference transfer. It's something that in this new era of college basketball is happening all the time. But Javon Jackson is now headed to Murray State. He previously played at USC last season. He averaged 11.6 points, 1.9 rebounds, 2.7 assists, and 1.5 steals per game. You might remember the USC Flames were a little bit of a shocker last season. They knocked off some good teams in Missouri Valley. They have, I think they got the ship righted there a little bit, and Javon Jackson leaving is obviously going to hurt them this season. However, I think it's a great pickup for Murray State, and that's definitely thanks to that Murray State NIL war chest. So, getting into his metrics here, he appeared in 31 games last year, served 29 games for the Flames. He shot 38.2% overall and 30.6% from beyond the arc. He ranked 489th with an 18.9 assist rate. He's a super strong on-ball defender as well. Like I mentioned, he averaged nearly 2 steals per game. He ranked 228th in the country with a 3.1% steal percentage. So this is the type of guy that, number one, he can score, number two, he can handle the ball, and number three, he can play defense. Gold mine pickup here for Murray State. He's an aggressive scorer. He can do it from all ranges of the court. He shot 43% from inside the arc. He's a super strong free throw shooter as well. So he's not afraid to get to the line. He played Valpo last year, and he went 11 to 13 from the line. So he's not going to be your all-star shooter from outside, but he's going to be a strong shooter from inside, and he's going to be able to get to the line to knock down and get you some points. He had some monster games, including a 30-point performance against Murray State, where he shot 60% from the floor. And Jackson's the type of guy that when he's on, he's going to score a lot of points for you. I also love a good Division II transfer up to the Division I level. We got Brayden Shorter, who's coming out of Washburn, which is a Division II school. He averaged 15.5 points, 4 rebounds, and 1 assist per game. So these types of guys that average a lot of points, they kind of fill the stat sheet at the Division II level. It's usually pretty evident that they have the potential to move up to that D1 level, and I think Ryan Miller has gotten a really good diamond in the rough here. So last season at Washburn, he's a 6'5 wing, and he shot 36.7% from beyond the arc, and he shot 37.1% from the season before. So, pretty good three-point shooter. It's going to be something that Murray State's going to really need here, especially competing in the Missouri Valley. Overall, he shot 41.6% from the floor, and he shot 43.9% the year prior. So, both those metrics slow down a little bit, but nothing to be too concerned about here. And he gets his shots up, there's no doubt about that. He took 9.5 shots per game last season, so he's in 74.8% of those were 3-point. So he really likes to shoot the ball. Again, his metrics, honestly, are pretty solid considering how much he is shooting. So gonna definitely be an offensive weapon for the Murray State Racers this season. And one thing to note is he was really sought after in the transfer portal. He had offers from Lipscomb, Indiana State, South Dakota State, North Dakota State, Liberty, Wyoming, and a lot more. So there's a reason why he was getting so much attention at the Division I level. And I think coming into this season, he's going to be looking to continue to elevate his career a little bit here because he's kind of got that chip on his shoulder. He started at the D2 level, he's going up to D1, and I think he's got the offensive capabilities to do that. All right, let's get to my favorite pickup for the Murray State Racers this season, and that is Layne Taylor out of Central Arkansas. If you followed me on social media last year, I talked about Central Arkansas probably more than I would have ever thought I'd talk about Central Arkansas, and it was purely because Layne Taylor. This is an undersized guard who is just insane on the court. He's about 5'11", but last year he averaged 17.4 points, 3.6 rebounds, 3.7 rebounds, and 1.9 assists per game. This is the type of guy that seriously can continue and just kind of become a spark. But he just has Cinderella story, bracket buster kind of momentum built into him. I feel like he's the type of guy he can get to the big dance. He can be like Doug Eder, but better. So there's a lot of appeal to this kid. Looking at his underlying metrics, he shot 47.3% overall and 32.9% from deep. He finished with an effective field goal percentage of 48.6. His assist rate was 227th in the country with a 24.1% mark, and he was 216th in the nation in turnover rate at just 10.7%. He also featured a 2.9% steal percentage while committing just 1.9 fouls per game on a 40-minute average. So, what doesn't he do well? Not much. So he can pass the ball. He plays super aggressive. He can nab boards at 5'11" and out-rebound people much taller than him. He's an aggressive scorer. He can shoot very well, and he can be that point guard for Murray State. So the way that I kind of see this shaping up, and we'll talk a little bit more about what I see that starting lineup looking like, but I think Layne Taylor's obviously going to be your point guard on this team, and then you're going to have somebody like Ben Shtolzberg who can come off the bench and give you some extra minutes when that offensive capability is not there. So the point being, Layne Taylor is going to probably be like a newcomer MVC Player of the Year type caliber. I'm being serious when I say this. This is how much faith I have in this kid. I think Murray State Racer fans are going to absolutely fall in love with him. I think he is going to really bust onto the scene this season. And I'll add one last note on him that I think is really important to know. When you play on a team that is not good, Central Arkansas was not good last season, you oftentimes can have your metrics skewed when you are the guy, quote unquote, the guy on your team. So when you look at the games, you're like, okay, maybe this guy averaged nearly 20 points on a really bad team. How good is he really going to be? Because I do think the averages can drop a little bit because he's going to be surrounded by a lot more talent. But that being said, against tougher competition, against Utah, he finished with 15 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals. Against Georgia Tech, he finished with 20 points, 5 assists, and 3 rebounds. So I think you can squander those questions around what's he going to do against better competition because, look, the Missouri Valley is loaded this season with talent. UNI, Illinois State, Murray State, Belmont's got guys. Like, you name it, every team in that conference is going to be competitive at some level. So my point being, I don't think his metrics are going to actually fall that much. I think he's still going to be able to continue on what he built as a freshman going into his sophomore season. As I mentioned previously, Murray State's really filled with a variety of people from the lower levels, from Division II levels, JUCO, and the higher levels. And one of those players that are transferring in from the higher level that didn't quite see the playing time that he anticipated was KJ Tenor. He's an incoming sophomore coming out of West Virginia. His freshman season, he averaged 2.4 points and 1.1 assists per game. He was former Tennessee Mr. Basketball Player of the Year. He spent his freshman season playing 30 games. He shot 35% overall and just 14.4% from beyond the arc, 426. I don't know. He's probably going to be better than that. We won't look too much in that. He only took 26 shots, and he's 6 foot. So you can imagine that like 3-point shooting is going to probably have to be part of his game. So you can imagine that those numbers probably will improve with some extra development and some more playing time. However, his playing inside the arc is very, very, very solid. On the season, he shot 44.4% from inside the arc, which, again, in his playing time, pretty solid. And the 3-point shooting should tick back up once he gets a little bit more development time in there for him. So, when you think of Murray State, you think about the long history of talented point guards. Some people call it Point Guard University. But you obviously have John Moran, you got Cam Payne, you got Isaiah Cannon, and so many more. And KJ Tenor really screams Murray State for me whenever I watch him play. He's super quick to the basket. He's really strong in transition, and he's super crafty around the rim. So I think with some time to kind of, number one, transition into the system, because I don't know if he's going to get a ton of playing time this season. However, give him some time in there with Ryan Miller and his coaching staff, and I think that Murray State's going to have a special player coming in, especially coming into his junior season. Moving over to the forwards, they have a 6'10 incoming forward named Brock Weiss. He technically started his career at Creighton, so yes, he's got that Ryan Miller connection there as well. Before he transferred in, he redshirted that season before he transferred into North Texas, where he officially saw playing time last season. He averaged 1.2 points and 0.6 rebounds. He was a finalist for Tennessee Mr. Basketball, and he actually was coached by Mike Miller, which is Ryan Miller's brother. So a lot of Ryan Miller connections there. He's really essentially a true freshman. He only appeared in 5 games last season. He's probably going to have a chance to break into a consistent role this season. He is very much a raw talent. A lot of the fundamentals are there, though, and I can see him maybe playing like a 10-minute, 15-minute a game role. I don't think he's going to be the bottom of the bench, to say that, especially because he's got great size. And when you watch him play, he does have a lot of good fundamental footwork in there. I do like it. I just think that he's going to take some extra time to develop there. And it's worth noting also, when he was coming out of high school, again, he was obviously finalist for Tennessee Mr. Basketball, but then he also had offers from Washington State, VCU, App State, Chattanooga, Evansville, Belmont, and a lot more. So you're talking about a lot of teams coming in from like the higher conferences. Multiple Missouri Valley teams were mentioned there. You're talking about the Sun Belt. You're talking about Washington State. So like the talent is obviously there. People saw that. He just needs more time to develop into the system. Obviously, DePaul was kind of a shocker for many people last season. This is a team that was coming out of the cellar, and they're doing a great job building that program back up to what it could be in the Big East. However, Traynor was a piece of that last season, and he entered the transfer portal and is now headed to Murray State, where he's going to take on a larger role with the team. Last season, he averaged 5.6 points and 3.3 rebounds. He's a 6'9 forward. And again, this was a different team last year. So this was not the DePaul team where he was just an okay player on a bad team. This was a much improved team. Not great, but much improved from comparative years where we've seen DePaul. Last year, he shot 55.8% from the floor. He shot 30.8% from beyond the arc. He appeared in 32 games, starting in 10 of them. So he's got some monster athleticism, and he's going to slide right into that rotation pretty easily here. He's not going to be a volume shooter from outside, but you got people like Layne Taylor. You got people like Brayden Shorter. I'm drawing a blank on his name there. Brayden Shorter. So you're going to have people from the outside that are going to take over, especially from that guard position. But at the forward position, Traynor is going to play more of a traditional inside forward, inside center role. Something that's going to be drastically needed. He shot a ridiculous 66.7% from inside the arc, which was 51st in the country last season. On the defensive end, he had a 16.8% defensive rebounding percentage and a 3.9% blocking percentage, which that was 294th in the nation. And he averaged 1.6 blocks per game throughout each of those 30 games last year. So, you got a lot of potential in this player to kind of fill in to more of a traditional center role. Something that's going to be very drastically needed because Murray State's got a lot of athleticism at the guard position. They're going to be running fast, probably. So now he can kind of hold down, and number one, people can feed him inside. because he was averaging 5.6 points per game. He was shooting nearly 70% a game in the Big East. Huge numbers. So once you transfer it down to the Missouri Valley, which again, very good conference, however, you can expect those numbers to go up even more. He's probably going to end up averaging 10 plus points a game this season very easily, and could be a candidate for winning Defensive Player of the Year in the Missouri Valley. There's a lot of good defensive bigs down there. You got Connor Turnbull at Evansville, who won Defensive Player of the Year last year, and you got a lot of big men. You got Chase Walker at Illinois State, so a lot of talent that he's going to need to be able to go up against, but also he can kind of smother other guards driving into the paint. So I like this pickup a lot. I think he's going to be huge for the Racers this season. They also picked up Mason Miller, who is, yes, the son of Mike Miller and nephew of new head coach Ryan Miller. He did take a step back in his role last season. So I want to highlight what he did at Creighton previously, where he actually started in 33 games his sophomore season. He averaged 5.6 points, 3.3 rebounds. He shot 48.8% overall and 45.4% from three-point on 108 attempts. His playing time practically evaporated going into this last season. He averaged 1.1 points, 1.6 rebounds. So all this to be said, the talent is there. Very curious. I don't know a lot about Creighton basketball, so I don't know if this was, obviously Creighton was exceptionally good last season, so perhaps that's what went into this. They got new guys. He just kind of fell out the rotation. However, if you're able to start 33 games for Creighton and average those types of numbers, you're obviously going to be able to contribute at Murray State University. So I'm super pumped to see him come in and see what he can bring. I think that, again, at that forward position, you're pairing him up, and you're kind of going vice versa against what J.J. Traynor's bringing in. J.J. Traynor's bringing in the defensive end, the inside presence. He's bringing in the blocking presence, while Mason Miller can shoot from outside. So you're kind of flexing those two, and that gives you two different options to pair with your rotation. So, like, let's say you want to start J.J. Traynor. So maybe in your starting lineup, you have more guard play, while you have J.J. Traynor kind of locking down the paint a little bit. But then in the secondary, where you have somebody like Ben Shtolzberg, who's not a shooter, you bring in Mason Miller, who can flex at the forward position. So, you can kind of mix and match. I think that's what, there's a lot of versatility on this team, and I'm super pumped. Getting into the traditional centers, we have Fredrick King, who, by the way, dominated in the Bahamas when, if you didn't know, the Murray State Racers went down and played some teams in the Bahamas during the summer, just kind of number one to get practice, kind of start gelling. Again, this is an entirely new team, so number one, kudos to Ryan Miller for doing that. I think that's huge, to be able to kind of gel together a little bit, see how you're playing on the court, see what you got in some of these guys, even if you're not playing against top talent. But King is coming in from, once again, Creighton, so he's following over his head coach over to the Murray State Racers. He appeared in 36 games last season, still averaged 2.7 points and 1.3 rebounds in just 5.9 minutes per game. Best game of the season came against Notre Dame. He finished with 14 points, 5 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 steal, and 4 blocks on 6 of 10 shooting. So yeah, you look at the numbers and you're like, what am I getting out of this? However, you're getting a very good defensive big, and he, again, dominated at the Bahamas. There was a lot of people who were really excited about this pickup, and at first, until I watched footage of him, I was like, why are you excited about a guy averaging less than 3 points a game here? However, I see why. Super raw talent, but the type of guy that can come to Missouri Valley just absolutely dominate. Definitely a traditional center, so he's not going to be out there, popping threes, but his underlying metrics show that in an expanded role, he could dominate on the defensive end. He finished with a 6.3% blocking percentage, an 11.3% offensive rebounding percentage, and a 66.7% effective field goal percentage. A lot of good metrics here. So super excited to see, number one, what he can do in an expanded role, and number two, can he take on and can be consistent in that expanded role versus, just having a couple of big games here or there. The Racers also brought in Dylan Anderson out of Boise State. So he's kind of bounced around a little bit throughout his career. He's a 7-foot center, so huge length here. Started his career at Arizona. He appeared in 15 games, and he transferred to Boise State. He appeared in 24 games last season, and he started in 11 games. He averaged 3.5 points, 1.7 rebounds. He shot 53.8% overall and 38.5% from beyond the arc, given that was only 13 attempts, so he's not exactly a three-point shooter out here, but hey, nice flexibility to show that, even at 7 foot, he can flex outside. Who knows? Maybe there's something there a little bit there. His best game of the season came against Utah Tech when he finished with 14 points on 5 of 11 shooting. So kind of, again, yet another raw talent. This is why I mentioned this earlier on, people don't know how to rank Murray State in terms of the preseason rankings here, because this is a lot of talent from various different levels that have never played together, outside of the people who all have Creighton connections. So this is another one. Really raw talent, but he averaged just 10.1 minutes per game last season. And I think that he's going to be really due for an increased opportunity at Murray State, where I think that, he could be averaging 20 to 25 minutes per game. And I think that those underlying metrics look so good that I think it's going to be hard not to see an increased output from Anderson coming onto this team. So again, this is another one he finished with just a 1% block percentage, which don't love, but a 1.1% steal percentage and a 3.9% offensive rebounding percentage. So he's 7 foot, but doesn't really play like a 7-footer, which is okay because you have Fredrick King, so you can kind of play those two off of each other. It's very similar to what I was saying with Mason Miller versus JJ Traynor at the traditional power forward spot. You can kind of swap those two out. You can swap Anderson and King out and play two different types of centers depending on who else you have in that lineup. Because I think Anderson might be a little bit more of a raw talent in terms of, defense. Meanwhile, Fredrick King is better defensively, but maybe more raw talent offensively. So you can kind of bounce those two off depending on what type of lineup you have. But anytime you have a 7-footer, especially a 7-footer that's played at the higher conference ranks, they're going to be contributing on your team next season. Looking at the freshmen, they actually have 4 freshmen coming in this season. And I'm not saying, many times at this point in time in college basketball, freshmen are not seeing the floor very often. However, I do think that actually some of these freshmen could contribute in year one underneath Ryan Miller at Murray State. Tristan Ford is a 6'3 guard coming out of Rockford, Illinois. He was listed as one of the top point guards in the state. He ranked 3rd best recruit coming out of Illinois, and he was listed as a 3-star per 24/7 Sports. He's super athletic. He can drive to the basket. He can step outside and knock down some 3-point shots. And what I love and what I always look for in a point guard is, can they create their own offense? And the answer for Tristan Ford is yes, he can. I think he's going to be a big piece. I don't know how much he'll see this year of the court. However, I think that he's a very good long-term piece for Murray State. I think they do have multiple options at that guard position. However, I don't think he'll redshirt. I think this is the type of guy that could average 10 minutes a game as a freshman and still contribute and start getting that developmental time. He had a lot of offers. He was pretty highly sought after from many, many strong programs outside of the conference ranks. He had offers from Arkansas State, Bradley, Milwaukee, Duquesne, App State, Arizona State, and Texas A&M. So you're talking about many, many, many good programs from kind of the mid-major level, and including he started picking up some offers from actual power conference schools. So I think that he is going to be a huge piece for Murray State. I know I talked a lot earlier about them kind of being the developmental, point guard university, and I think that there's a reason for that. I think Tristan Ford is going to be able to kind of be that guy, especially in the future, and I'm excited to see him get an opportunity this year and kind of see what he can do in the court. Murray State also hit the international ranks pretty hard this season. They actually nabbed their first ever French basketball player in school history in Mathis Courban, and he's a 6'6 wing. He played for Shrao Roan Basket. I think I nailed that. But this past season, where he appeared in 27 games, he averaged about 10 minutes per game, where he averaged 3.4 points, 1.1 rebounds, and 0.7 assists. He shot 48.4% overall and 35% from beyond the arc. A lot to like, again, about the long-term potential here. I do foresee somebody like this redshirting, where they're just coming over from overseas. They're kind of getting used to, number one, the college basketball ranks, and number two, kind of the rigor that comes with it. Not saying that, the rigor is going to be much different, but I think that he's going to need a little bit more time developing, especially with some of the talent they already have on this team that exists. So I think that the long-term potential here is very good. And again, this is the type of guy that he wasn't like a top international recruit coming out of France. It was just that Murray State found him. And let me tell you, I'll link a clip to his highlights down below in the description of this video. Highly recommend watching him. Super talented, and I think Racer fans got something to be excited about there. So they also brought in yet another 6'3 guard coming out of Memphis, Tennessee, named Dillon Butler. I'm going to be honest with you, I had a really hard time finding a lot of information about this kid. Honestly, I couldn't even find footage of him outside of just his personal YouTube account. So, you kind of got to take some of that footage with a grain of salt a little bit when you're looking at these things. So, he could be talented. I think he's going to redshirt this season. I don't see how somebody can just kind of come out and surprise us when there's really just no known. He wasn't really ranked, but from what I saw in his personal videos that he had posted, he seems like a very strong scorer. He had a nice looking shot. I liked his form a lot there. So I think that he could just be a long-term piece. Also, these are the type of guys that really just surprise people. I think about a lot of guys in the past, especially in the Missouri Valley, who were totally overlooked coming out of high school and went on to become absolute stars. So, could absolutely become something very good for Murray State, but I think this coming season should be on the redshirt watch list. So if you didn't know, I had actually posted a roster review earlier this offseason already about Murray State on our weekly newsletter that we do, and I had talked about Domon. He is a 6'10 forward coming out of the international ranks in France, so I had watched videos of him, and I thought that he could be really, really good. However, I kind of stuck my foot in my mouth a little bit because I was like, I think he's more of a long-term piece. I don't know how much he's going to contribute in year one, because truthfully, when you're getting these international players, you really don't know. Again, the international ranks in the Missouri Valley last season, a lot of people didn't know who Gabriel Pizzato was, and then he popped off at Evansville, and now he's landing at Xavier. So these are the type of guys that you don't really know what you got coming into the season. However, since I posted that article, he absolutely dominated the FIBA Under 20 tournament this past offseason, or a couple months ago. He averaged 11.3 points, 3.4 rebounds, and 1.4 assists. He actually made the all-tournament team as well. So just kind of a little bit funny outcome that happened. When I posted this, there was a guy that had said, hey, you need to watch him. I don't think you hyped him up enough. And I was like, you know what? I don't know, man. And then turns out, yeah, the guy was actually right. I should have been paying maybe a little bit more attention here. But what I love about him is he's super quick on his feet. And he can play inside with his height, but also he can stretch outside, knock down some threes. Love a flexible big man. So, I think he could be really, genuinely a huge piece for the Racers. Not just for long term, but also this coming season. Again, I truthfully don't know how much time he's really going to see on the floor. I think, 10 to 12 minutes is probably something that's going to be very, very, very realistic. Murray State also had a freshman kind of come in at the last second. They did come in after I'd already posted the newsletter a few months ago. His name's Lachlan Crate. He's coming out of New Zealand. He's a 6'8 guard/forward. And let me tell you, pretty impressive resume here. So as I mentioned earlier, I think with Fredrick King, Murray State went down and played in the Bahamas for a few games, just kind of a little bit of early practice, a little bit of early exhibition games. And in one game in particular, he really dominated. So they played a team called Calgary coming out of into this game, and Crate dominated. He finished with 15 points. He shot 7 of 7 from the floor, including 1 3-pointer. So kind of really impressive stuff here, especially coming out of early gate. And what I liked was Miller was kind of playing with his different rotations a little bit here. So coming out of this, he played in the FIBA Under-19 tournament. He scored 10 points and 2 steals against Slovenia. This is the type of player, when you're looking through his stats here, he's got a very impressive background. He was named defensive MVP at the New Zealand Foot Locker Under-18 Nationals, and he was one of 2 New Zealand players that were selected to play in the NBA's Basketball Without Borders camp during the 2025 NBA All-Star Weekend. Who's even heard of this guy? I hadn't. I don't know. I'm not an international basketball scout. That's not my forte. But if you're going down and to look at this list of credentials that he's talking about, you're like, dang, this guy's could become a huge prospect for Murray State. And I think it's true, and I love that he already was seeing playing time, and it's also definitely he's not on my redshirt watch list. This is the type of guy that probably could be coming out and really contributing on this team coming off the bench, if not eventually coming out of the starting lineup. I don't think he'll be in the starting lineup initially by any means, but I do think that he could be contributing with 15, 20 minutes a game probably pretty quickly in his career at Murray State. So keep an eye on this guy, somebody who really just came out of the woodwork last second, but those are the type of guys that can come out and surprise you. So looking at the team overall, there's a lot to love about this roster. Again, people don't know how to project them, and I think at a minimum, they're going to finish in the top 4 of this conference. I really do. Unless something just catastrophic happens with injuries or catastrophic happens in terms of this team does not gel well together. So I think with putting those 2 things aside, this is a team that could even win the Missouri Valley Conference, and I do believe that. And that's with me saying that with Illinois State and Northern Iowa retaining both top 5 players in minutes this season. So, even with the veteran presence coming back, I do think that the potential of this team is to win the Missouri Valley Conference. Will they do that? I don't know. Time will only tell. It's hard to project the Missouri Valley Conference every season anyway. So, however, I do think that with the raw talent that they have on this team, it is hard to not pick them at least in the top 4 of this conference. So when you're looking at a potential starting lineup, I think you obviously have Layne Taylor coming in at point guard. You got Javon Jackson coming in at shooting guard, and you got Brayden Shorter coming in at the traditional small forward spot. Both, or all three, absolutely no-brainers on they're going to be in the starting lineup. I don't see how they're not in the starting lineup. Coming in at the traditional power forward, you have Traynor, and then coming in at the traditional center, you have Fredrick King. So I like this because you're kind of mix-matching the talent that you have in your starting lineup. You have a lot of scoring options between Taylor, Jackson, and Shorter. And then you have the traditional big men who don't shoot outside coming in Traynor and King at the traditional power forward and center spots. So you're creating a lockdown defense inside the paint on the defensive end. And Javon Jackson and Layne Taylor are both strong on ball defenders as well. And then you have Shorter and Jackson and Taylor who all can knock down threes. But in particular, Jackson and Taylor can also take a lot of mid-range shots and drive into the paint, while Shorter sits outside and just pops a lot of threes because that's his specialty. He's a three-point specialist. So, I love the mix match of the lineup. So, I don't know. That's what I would go with in terms of if I was Ryan Miller and I was picking the starting lineup. But again, time will tell on that. Looking at who would be coming off the bench, you would have Ben Shtolzberg, who's going to come in and be a backup point guard. Again, he's not an offensive weapon, but he doesn't have to be. He's a tremendous ball handler, and I think it'd be silly for him not to have some playing time coming in. Kind of being number one, he's also got a veteran presence and a lot of experience at the Division I level already, and that's super valuable to have on a team, especially a team with a lot of younger faces coming in. So I think he comes in off the bench as your primary point guard, or primary backup point guard. You got KJ Tenor, who, again, I think deserves some playing time to see what he can really do and see if he can develop a little bit more into an expanded role. I think you're going to have Mason Miller come off the bench. Again, you can switch swap him and Traynor if you want to in the starting lineup. I don't see any different. It just depends on, do you want more of a traditional inside presence, or do you want Mason Miller who can shoot threes from outside? You'd also then have Dylan Anderson coming in to be able to back up Fredrick King. Again, 7-footer, hard not to play him. However, with the addition of Crate, I think the power forward center spot kind of gets a little bit more interesting. I think Crate could come in and actually steal some minutes from somebody here, and that might be Anderson. But also, again, 7 foot, hard not to play 7-footer, especially in the Missouri Valley where you can go up against some really tough defenders. The problem is his metrics don't show that he's actually a really strong defender. So Fredrick King's going to probably get the majority of the minutes there, but if somebody like Creighton come in and be, somebody who was named defensive MVP in New Zealand, could easily steal some minutes from Anderson here, definitely. I think overall my largest question about this team is the lack of experience. You got 5 freshmen, and given some of them are in redshirt, but then you got a lot of people coming kind of from all over. You have multiple guys coming in from power conferences who haven't played much. You have guys coming in from Division II. You have guys coming in from lower ranks. So, you just have a lot of questions around what are these players going to truly do in an expanded role. Because on paper, you can watch the videos and the highlights and say, yep, they're going to be good. They have a lot of good fundamentals. They can shoot from outside and all this stuff. But, when you actually get on the court and start playing those regular season games, especially once you're getting to the dog days in the conference, you don't know fully what you're going to get out of these guys. And I think that's my largest question. I'm not really too concerned about it. I'm not. But I do think it's something worth acknowledging that there is that question mark around how are they going to gel, and do they have a good enough experience levels to be able to compete, especially when it comes time for a tournament. So again, Northern Iowa and Illinois State are returning nearly top 5 players in terms of their full rotation of of minutes in the game. So you're going up against people who have a lot of experience, not just at college basketball, but experience in conference in Missouri Valley. So it is going to be a tough ask, and I think it's worthwhile calling out that is probably my largest concern. However, in terms of offense and defense, he does have such a wide variety of players. He's got people who can just play the traditional inside presence inside the paint. You have people who can shoot lights out from outside, like Shorter and Layne Taylor. I think it's a great mix. It's a lot of guys who haven't necessarily played together a lot, and they haven't necessarily played in expanded roles at Division I level. Once again, I'll kind of just wrap up here by saying I do genuinely feel like the ceiling of this team is winning the Missouri Valley Conference. I think it's silly not to understand that the pure talent level of what this team could be is super high. I think at the absolute worst, they finish in the middle of the pack. I think they should at least finish in top 4. So I love this team. a lot. I think they just really could gel well. If they gel well, that's going to be the key. If they gel well, this is going to be a super talented team. And it's going to be a team that a lot of people probably aren't expecting necessarily coming out of it because they've been down the last few years. They have an entirely new roster. You don't know how it's going to play. But Murray State fans are hungry. The administration's hungry and donors are hungry. So with that comes a new head coach who's, number one, going to be hungry to succeed as the head coach of this new team. And he's got a lot of backup and support coming in behind him as well. I think this team is going to really, really surprise people. But, I will add again, running through practices, going through exhibitions, playing in us all at Bahamas is one thing. Playing in non-conference and regular and full conference games in the Missouri Valley is a totally different thing. So how will they experience test up against once they get into the season? Because that's my only concern. Because I think they've got it locked down in defense, they got it locked down in offense. It's just really going to come to the question of, can they play together? And from what I saw in Bahamas, it's probably not going to be a question. However, again, that's one thing versus going up against actual Division I talent coming into the regular season. So I will end on this. I highly recommend that you keep an eye on Murray State because I think this is a team that's going to shock a lot of people this season. Again, thank you all for watching today, and I will say that if you want our weekly newsletter, which right now we are covering multiple different teams' rosters every single week, I recommend that you subscribe to our Substack newsletter on bracketbustershoops.com. You will get all the latest information. We're doing these videos now on top of it, and those are coming out usually about every Wednesday, and the newsletters themselves are coming out on Monday. And once we get into the regular season, we have a lot of other content planned. So what I recommend is you also subscribe to our YouTube channel down below. I know that I'll be very grateful. So I'll catch y'all next time.